Welcome back to the Fantasy Fortune YouTube channel, and today we are going to go through my fantasy tight end tiers. I only did about the top 25, but we have 4 tiers, which doesn't seem like a lot. I don't think there is a bunch of huge tier breakoffs with the tight ends this season. We won't sit here for 45 minutes and dive deeply into each player, because most of these players are going to be in separate videos where I do take a 5 to 8 minute deep dive into them. But we will be recapping some important, takes that I have on some of these players. Bear with me on the service. Got some bad Wi-Fi up in the room. I might get laggy. I think it'll be all right. But let's dive into it. Right? The first tier is going to be the S tier, and it is Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and George Kittle. And yes, this is in order for me. I posted a few videos on my TikTok and Instagram. The links for those will be down below. That Trey McBride is my tight end 1 this season. A lot of people seem to be very upset about it. How can you not have Brock Bowers? I got nothing against Brock Bowers. I mean, he was tight end. I think he was tight end 1 last year. Went absolutely nuts in his rookie season. I don't have much negative to say about him, but I have a million positive things to say about Trey McBride, and let's dive into him. So first of all, Trey McBride last season, he was the tight end 2 in points per game, and number 1 was George Kittle. He averaged 15.6 PPR points per game. Bowers was 15.5. George Kittle was 15.8. But the thing I like to harp on here, he was expected 19.2 points per game, which was the number 1 tight end in expected fantasy points. And what I always say about expected things, a lot of times players will score more or less touchdowns than expected. Example, James Cook smashed 16 plus rushing touchdowns last year despite his line being at 2.5. Jared Goff had a bit of an outlier touchdown season. Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley's rushing yards, like those guys are all due for a little bit of regression, especially because they smashed what their expected number was. That typically happens, but there's also guys that are expected for 5 or 6 touchdowns, and they only score 1 or 2. Hence Trey McBride, very, very due for more touchdowns. And aside from that, among all pass catchers, as tight ends and receivers, he was 4th in the NFL in receptions with 111, and 11th with receiving yards with 1,146. He had the highest target share among all tight ends, 25%, and 1st in air yards among all tight ends. He has the easiest schedule among any tight ends for opposing defenses. Now that typically changes in the mid-season when injuries happens and defenses are worse or better than we thought they would be. But at least for now, he's got the number 1 easiest tight end schedule in the NFL. I said 25% target share. It's really 28. It'll pop up the entire tight end target share. And pretty much as you'd expect, it's McBride and Bowers up at the top, and I guess Kelsey, and then a huge dip. Trey McBride was 3rd among all tight ends in red zone targets with 20. Isn't that crazy? The dude scored 2 touchdowns and he had 20 red zone targets, which was 3rd among all tight ends. Expected for a lot more receiving touchdowns last year than he had. And I very, very, very much think that number is going to go up this season. So that is why I think Trey McBride will be the tight end 1. I don't think I need to say too much on Brock Bowers. We know what he's going to be. Huge quarterback upgrade with Geno Smith, who's statistically the most accurate quarterback in the NFL last season. And then George Kittle, points per game outside of his rookie season, tight end 3, tight end 1, tight end 3, tight end 4, tight end 2, tight end 6, and tight end 1. He's going to be a top 5 tight end. Especially with no Debo and Ayuk coming off the PUP list. Tier number 2 is going to start with Sam Laporta. And I will have David Njoku, Evan Ingram, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce in this tier as well. I like Sam Laporta this year. If you followed me at all last year, I told you to fade him. Do not draft him. He was drafted way too high. He was bound for touchdown regression. there was so many red flags, and it panned out. I mean, he was tight end 1, first drafted off the board, and he finished as the tight end 8. Not typically what you want from the guy you have to take in the top 3 rounds, but there's a little more to it, right? Sam Laporta last season in his first 9 games, 3.6 targets, 2.8 catches, 41 yards, tight end 14 in points per game, and tight end 21 in expected points per game. Final 8 games when he got healthy, this is what people don't really know, is he was pretty banged up for the first half of the season. But the second half of the season, 7.3 targets, 5.1 catches per game, 51 yards, tight end 5 in points per game, and tight end 6 in expected points per game. That is more along the lines of what I expect for Sam Laporta this season. Now, I still really don't find myself drafting him too much, and the reason for that being if I can't get one of these top 3 guys who are in a tier of their own, I typically just wait till the later rounds. Target some of the guys at the end of this tier that you can get for way cheaper. But I'm not mad at the Laporta pick this year. I think he'll definitely be a top 5 tight end. David Njoku. Dude is one of my most targeted tight ends in fantasy football this season. So, his ADP in 2022 was tight end 7. He was tight end 8 in points per game. 2023, tight end 9. Tight end 5 finish. Tight end 10 in 2024, tight end 5 finish. And now he's the tight end 10 again. He's telling you every single season he's going to beat his ADP. Doesn't matter how bad the offense is, how bad the quarterbacks are. He's had that the past few seasons with Deshaun Watson. Flacco had a nice little run. DTR, Jameis Winston. This year is going to be Pickett, Flacco, or Shador Sanders. Like, I don't know, but he's still going to finish top 5, top 6 in my opinion. He was tight end 6 in points per game last season, but tight end 3 in expected points per game. Again, with the expected. In games where he ran 60% of the routes, he had almost 10 targets per game and a 23.6 target share, which in the chart I showed earlier would have put him at 3rd or 4th among all tight ends. He's bound for a big year. Then we have Evan Engram. I think that, in 2023, he was the tight end 2 overall, led all tight ends with 114 receptions with Jacksonville. Last year, he dealt with his own injuries. Trevor Lawrence dealt with injuries. So he had Mac Jones. The offense was bad. All the coaches got fired. They blew it up, right? But this year he's on the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton has a very good history with tight ends. Jimmy Graham in New Orleans. It's rumored that he's going to play the Joker for Sean Payton, which is a huge piece in fantasy football. Bo Nix took a huge leap in the second half of last season. He's a good quarterback. The target competition is really Cortland Sutton and a bunch of mid-wide receivers that'll get involvement here and there. Obviously, they check down to running back a lot. But I think Engram is due for a huge bounce-back season, as well as TJ Hawkinson, who just wasn't healthy last season, but he's in a pretty good situation. If McCarthy hits, Hawkinson's going to be valid. Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, not the biggest on these guys because they are tight end 5 and tight end 6, meaning they're going ahead of everyone in this tier except Laporta. But they're the old guys, right, who regressed last season. We'll start with Mark Andrews. The reason I'm not too in on him, you can see the game log here. The first 5 weeks were absolutely brutal last season. Only 1 finish inside the top 24 tight end, 2 finishes, I guess. And then, for the rest of the season, pretty inconsistent up until the second half. And the reason for this being he scored hella touchdowns, tight end 9, tight end 3, 6, 7, 5, 5 in the last 6 games of the season. But he was really tight end or bust. He hasn't had 70-plus receiving yards in the game in 22 games straight. And the reason I expect regression, he's in his 30s now. We saw him take a step back last year. They involved Isaiah Likely a little more. They added DeAndre Hopkins, which is going to be a big piece in the red zone. That is really what all Hopkins does now, is be a red zone target. So there's Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, and Mark Andrews will be the red zone guys. But we know when they get down there, what do they want to do? They want to run the ball with Derrick Henry. Now, not to say that there's not going to be touchdown opportunities. There will. But it is worth noting that Lamar Jackson had a career-high 41 passing touchdowns last season. So I think there is a lot of different pieces pointing to a little bit of touchdown regression for Mark Andrews. And if that is coming down, I don't want to pay this tight end 5 or 6 price when if I can get another touchdown or bust guy like Tucker Kraft outside of the top 10 tight ends, right? Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Travis Kelce is a huge fade for me, though. You can see his game log, 1,000 yards every single season up until 2023. He almost hit 1,000, had 5 touchdowns, even more regression last year, 800 yards and only 3 touchdowns, even though he had the second most, or maybe the most red zone targets in the NFL. The reason I'm fading him, outside of the being 35 years old and showing a lot of regression last year, his stats with Rashee Rice, I don't know why nobody wants to talk about it. I know it's only 3 game sample size last year, but he averaged 2.7 catches a game, 23 yards per game on only 4 targets. They play a very similar role, right? In the middle of the field, underneath type of thing. It's going to be clearly Rashee Rice, not the 35-year-old decoy in Travis Kelce, if you ask me, and they showed that last year. Not only is Rashee Rice going to be healthy the whole year, Worthy took a leap. He's going to be back. Marquise Brown is expected to actually be healthy for once. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be another year removed from his broken fibula. The Chiefs' pass rate was not dead last. The worst pass rate that they've had under the Mahomes era. I just think it's a crowded room, and I'm not trying to pay a top 6 tight end price for a guy that has regressed the past couple of seasons and is probably bound for more regression with a very crowded offense. I'm not trying to say Travis Kelce sucks, you can't draft him. I just think that the price is just absolutely not worth it. And I mentioned this in the Vegas line video I made. Him and David Njoku have the same exact receiving yard line, and Njoku is projected for 1 more touchdown. Yet you can get Njoku at tight end 10 or 11, depending on what site, and Kelsey's tight end 6, about a 30-pick difference. I mean, tell me why on earth you would rather pay the price for Travis Kelce when you can get probably the same production 30 picks later. I don't get it. The next tier, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren, Jake Ferguson, Colston Loveland, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Hunter Henry, and Jonnu Smith. Now, there's only a few guys I'll talk about here to keep the video short. Tucker Kraft, I think, he's a tight end or touchdown or bust guy. Realistically, I think outside of the top 6 or 7 tight ends, like basically from Andrews and Kelce on, I think will be pretty much touchdown or bust. And, like I said, Kraft's ADP is way better than Andrews and Kelce. He played 97% of the snaps in the playoff game when Musgrave was fully healthy, so he's clearly overtaken that tight end 1 role. Tyler Warren, see, I'm a Colts fan. You can see all this stuff. God, I love the guy as a prospect. I think his ADP is a tad bit high because look how big this tier is. And he's about the tight end 11 or 12 in ADP, whereas all these guys are like significantly behind him. Some are multiple rounds behind him. And like I said, I think they're in the same tier. I think Warren clearly has more upside than anyone else in this tier, I would say. But we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. We don't know what the target share is going to look like. I know they want to get him involved big time. But Pittman and Downs also, play across the middle of the field, get the short dump offs that he's supposed to get. We don't really know what that's going to look like. His touchdowns, I don't think he has the most touchdown upside with this somewhat crowded offense, run-heavy offense, subpar quarterback play, and not the highest scoring offense. So Jake Ferguson, I like him a little bit. I think Dak is going to have a big bounce-back year. He was MVP candidate, and the offense was number 1 in points per game in 2023. I think they could return to that. They were number 1 in pass rate last season before Dak went down. But they did add George Pickens to make it more crowded. Loveland obviously has a ton of upside. I don't think we have much clarity on how Ben Johnson is going to use the weapons in this offense just yet. So, I mean, it could take a few weeks or half the season for him to fully overtake Cole Kmet. They could be using DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, and Luther Burden more. Obviously, he has very high upside, but I think he has a lot of risk. Kincaid, Goddard. They'll give you Kincaid. I can't really wrap my mind around Kincaid. I should probably do a little bit more research on him. I think he's just kind of an ad pick. Will probably be on the waiver wire a lot. Goddard. The only upside I can see for him is a kick and touchdowns, and their passing volume would need to go up, meaning probably a Saquon injury. Otherwise, he doesn't have all that much upside. Hunter Henry, I think, is a very cheap pick and is a dark horse candidate to lead this team in targets. I don't know if he actually will. He was one of the guys that was expected for a lot more touchdowns than he actually scored last season. With this offense, Drake May leap, offensive line improvement, added running back depth, a couple more pieces at wide receiver. I mean, he could be a touchdown monster. Again, could be a touchdown or bust, but he's the cheapest, solid touchdown or bust guy out there. And then Jonnu Smith, I'll talk about a little bit before I get to the last tier. I just want to make it known he's a Pittsburgh Steeler now, and you should not be excited about that. I've seen a lot of people not really move him down too much. He was a tight end 9 for me. A lot of people had him at, tight end 4, 5, 6. He was the tight end 9. He drops down to tight end 16, 17, something like that in my rankings, which, by the way, if you want to see my free draft guide, it'll be linked down below. This is what it includes. I put a ton of work into it. It is going to be a very helpful piece in your drafts. But going to Arthur Smith in a crowded tight end room with Pat Freiermuth, I think a lot of people are under the assumption, Arthur Smith loves Jonnu Smith. Look what he did just 2 years ago in Atlanta. It's yes, that was a good season because he wasn't on anyone's radar. He was outside the top 20 tight ends. And then he was better than Kyle Pitts, who sucks. And everyone is he had a great year. He only had a great year because he wasn't expected to do anything. But now being drafted inside the top 10, which I'm sure will drop in ADP as time goes on after the trade, you shouldn't be excited about him. His fantasy finishes for under Arthur Smith, tight end 20, tight end 16, tight end 17. And then he was tight end 4 last season without him. In targets in 2019, 32nd among tight ends, 18th among tight ends in 2020, and 17th among tight ends in 2023. So what I suggest you take away from this is that the good year he had under Arthur Smith was a better year than expected, but that's because he was on nobody's radar. But now he is, and now he's a little overdrafted, if you ask me. He'll be a waiver wire guy all season. His ceiling is now capped, and his floor is a little bit lower. And on the last tier, Isaiah Likely, Zach Ertz, Mike Gesicki, Kyle Pitts, Brenton Strange, Chig Okonkwo, and Mason Taylor. Barring a Mark Andrews injury or trade, I can't see Likely doing too much. His splits and target share went significantly down after that Week 1 game last season. Ertz and Gesicki had some very solid games last season. Both of them are in very good offense. Ertz has some added target comp with Deebo Samuel, but he was up at the top of the league in red zone targets. I think him and Gesicki are the two guys in this tier that if they could find some more consistency or at least just have they have a higher ceiling than a lot of these guys on a game-to-game basis. I don't think any of these guys are really going to be drafted outside of best ball leagues, but I would keep my eye on those two. Kyle Pitts, there's still people excited about him, saying it's finally the year. I don't really think I need to waste my time. He doesn't. The offense runs through Bijan, Drake London, and Darnell Mooney. He ain't doing shit. Brenton Strange is a guy I like to keep my eye on. He had a few solid performances without Evan Ingram last year. And I don't know how Liam Cohen will involve the tight end in this offense. But when he was forced to use the tight end last season, when Godwin was hurt, Cade Otton was the a top 5 tight end for a 4 or 5 week span. He was going absolutely nuts. I don't think that'll be Brenton Strange, but if any injuries happen, Strange is probably going to crush this ADP. Mason Taylor is a sneaky guy for a lot of targets in his rookie season, but obviously the passing volume, so with Field, won't really be there. And then lastly, Chiga Conquo. We saw him have a huge kick in production over the end of last season when there were some injuries. He's got a QB upgrade. If they can stick to that same involvement, he could probably be bumped up a tier. We're not really too sure, but he's a pretty talented tight end. So I think the guys in this tier I'd keep my eye on are Ertz, Gesicki, Strange, and Okonkwo. And then before I end the video, got to shout out Underdog Fantasy. A lot of these guys have some pretty beautiful ADPs on those best ball drafts. You can get up to $100 free just for joining with the code FORTUNE. Pick higher or lower than on season prop lines. And join fantasy football drafts. You can do this little $3 draft called the Schnauzer Draft a Team and win up to 20 grand with that team. Or there's a whole bunch of other pools, cheaper, more expensive. They all have different scoring and different ways you can win money, but they're phenomenal. I'm through like 20 to 25 drafts so far, and I'll be kicking that up in June. But yeah, make sure you comment for the draft guide, or the link will be in the comments. I put a lot of work into that. Keep that Underdog code in mind. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.